Tonight, I will share with you a story that has haunted a small town for decades. It's a story whispered in classrooms, murmured in hushed tones at family dinners, and passed from one frightened child to another under the covers at night. Some call it nothing more than an urban legend. Others believe it is the truth, a truth too disturbing to confront directly. Whatever you choose to believe, prepare yourself, because once you hear this tale, you'll never forget it. It all began with an abandoned house at the very edge of town. The house had stood there for as long as anyone could remember, its wooden beams twisted and broken, its windows either shattered or sealed by rotting planks. The iron gate leaned forward like a crooked smile, and the trees around it seemed unnaturally bent, their branches reaching toward the house as if they wanted to strangle it. The children in town called it the Crying House, and for good reason. According to them, if you walked past the house on a rainy night, you could hear someone sobbing inside. Long, aching sobs that sounded neither entirely human nor entirely unreal. It was said that if you followed the sound too closely, you might not come back at all. The girl had heard these stories many times from her new friends. Every day, when they walked home together, her friends would point toward the house and whisper warnings. Stay away. Don't ever step through the gate. Children disappear there. They told her of boys and girls who went missing after wandering too close, their bodies later found in strange places, drained of warmth, eyes wide open as if they had seen something unspeakable in their final moments. But no matter how many times they tried to frighten her, the girl never heard the crying. Not once. At first, she thought it was just a story meant to scare younger kids. Yet the house itself was terrifying enough even without ghosts. The cracked walls, the sagging roof, the nettles that choked the yard like a sea of thorns. It all looked like something that should not exist in a living neighborhood. And yet it did. One cold and rainy afternoon, the girl was forced to walk home alone. The streets were empty, the sky pressed down with heavy gray clouds, and her small umbrella barely protected her from the storm. She hurried along, trying not to look at the crying house as she passed. But that day, something was different, because standing by the rusted fence of the yard was a boy. "Hey!" the girl called out, remembering her friend's warnings. Did you hear someone crying in there?" The boy turned slowly. His face was pale, his clothes soaked through from the rain. He looked at her with an intensity that made her hesitate. "No," he said softly. "Nobody cries in there." Relief mixed with confusion. She had been so certain that if anyone could confirm the legend, it would be him. "You shouldn't go near that place," she said nervously. "It's dangerous. They say children." "I know what they say," the boy interrupted, "but it's not the whole story." His voice was calm, but something in it made her shiver. "Do you know who used to live there?" he asked. She shook her head. "A family," he whispered, "a family with 2 children, a girl and a boy." At first, she thought he was just making up another scary tale, but then his tone changed, lower, heavier, almost sad. They were happy once, at least until the boy was born. After that, the parents, they loved him more, and the girl couldn't stand it. The girl felt her throat tighten. "That's not true," she said quickly. "Brothers and sisters fight, but that's just how it is. They don't—" "She did," the boy said, cutting her off. "One night, when no one was watching, she took a knife from the kitchen and she cut off his head. The rain seemed to fall harder. The wind moaned against the trees, and the girl could hardly breathe. "That's not real," she whispered. "That's just a story." The boy stepped closer. Drops of water slid down his face like tears, but his expression never changed. "Do you want to see where they buried him?" Her first instinct was to run. Yet, for reasons she couldn't explain, she followed him. Maybe it was the way he spoke, as if he had been waiting for someone to listen. Maybe it was the fear of being alone in the storm. The boy didn't lead her through the nettles. Instead, he walked around the side of the house, keeping to the muddy path. His steps were light, almost too quiet, as if his feet barely touched the ground. They stopped behind the house where the trees grew denser. Among them stood a single tree, twisted and leafless, though the rest of the forest glowed with the red and orange colors of autumn. Beneath that tree was a shallow depression in the earth, the shape of a forgotten grave. "Here," the boy said, pointing. "This is where they put him. No stone, no marker, just dirt and silence." The girl's heart pounded in her chest. She didn't want to ask, but the question escaped her lips anyway. "How do you know all this?" The boy lifted his chin slowly. In the dim light, through the curtain of rain, she saw it. A dark, jagged scar stretching across his throat. A scar that circled his neck like a terrible necklace. Her blood ran cold. The boy's eyes locked onto hers. His voice was almost a whisper now, but sharper than any knife. "Why did you do it?" The girl's breath caught in her throat. Do what?" "Why did you cut off my head?" The girl stumbled back, shaking her head violently. "No, I didn't. I would never." But her protest was drowned by the howling wind. The boy stepped closer, his pale face inches from hers. Tears filled her eyes. She wanted to scream, to run, but her body refused to move. The rain blurred everything around her, until the world seemed reduced to just her and him, the living and the dead, bound together by a question she couldn't answer. And then, people who pass the crying house to this very day claim that when the rain falls hardest, they hear two voices instead of one. Not just the sobbing of a boy, but the soft, trembling cry of a girl. No one knows who she is or why her sorrow mingles with his, but everyone agrees on one thing. When you hear it, you don't stop to listen. You run. But here's something few people know. Long before the house was called the Crying House, old records show that the land itself carried a strange reputation. Over 100 years ago, there was a logging camp nearby. Workers often spoke of hearing a child crying in the forest at night. They would search and search, but never find anyone. Some said it was the spirit of a boy who had died in an accident with an axe. Others believed it was something far older, a spirit that lured people into the trees, only to leave them lost forever. One diary from that time describes a man who followed the sound of crying deep into the woods. His lantern was later found on the ground, still burning, but the man himself had vanished without a trace. When the family finally built their home on that land decades later, the crying didn't stop. It simply moved inside. So maybe it wasn't the children who cursed the house. Maybe it was the land itself. And if that's true, then the crying house is only one of many,